Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Monday morning, August the 2nd. I'm happy to be here. I had a little bit of trouble getting into with Skype, trying to get into the show. So I'm glad to be here. I'm just opening up the chat room right now, and just really glad to be able to continue doing these shows. And this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And I'm just waking up, having some coffee, and just happy to continue on. We're going to continue looking at codependency. I wanted to continue, especially with that article that we were talking about Friday morning, which was codependency, and it kind of related to child abuse, and that's why I was more interested in looking at that portion of it, because there is other types of codependency with substance abuse, alcoholism, and whatnot. But I was mainly concerned with and wanted to take a look at codependency sort of surrounding this whole issue with adult survivors of child abuse, right? And just to see if if these are some behaviors that I might have, or, and also just to get an idea of what it is. So that's why I wanted to take a look at this. I didn't know a whole lot about codependency, and had heard about it and had heard people talk about it in the past, and I never did any research on it, never looked it up, and sort of thought that I knew what it was, and had, thought that I had a pretty good grip on what codependency was. So actually, as we're going through the material, excuse me, I just have allergies. Sorry about that. As we're going through the material, I'm finding that I really didn't know all that much about it, and it is quite interesting. So I'm glad that you can be here. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning into the shows and listening to the archives and whatnot. I really appreciate it. And today is a civic holiday here in Alberta. Anyway, I'm not sure about the rest of the provinces. I know that there's a couple of the provinces that don't have this Monday as a holiday, but there's quite a few across the country here who are off day. And it's a civic holiday, so all the bank, of course, are closed and other things. So I'm off because I work at a bank, and I'm on a banker's holiday today. But I decided I better get up and continue on as normal with the day, right? I've got a busy day planned, and I thought, yep, I'll just do the show anyway, 6 o'clock. And so I'm glad to be here. And I'll just, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, I don't hold any certificates in those areas. And I just like to make sure that people know that and understand that. I'm just a private citizen who pays to do my own show, mainly because I want to be one more voice out there, just saying, we need to stop child abuse, and everyone's voice is important. And that, as a survivor of child abuse, and there's so many of us, it's absolutely ridiculous. We need to know that, first of all, we didn't deserve what happened to us, and second of all, that we don't deserve to suffer as adults. And third of all, that we don't deserve to suffer alone, in silence. I think that's just so horrible, and that's what so many of us do. And it's so tragic, and it's people who have not been abused quite often like to minimize the whole thing, and I've heard people say stuff like, oh, you should just be able to get over it, or it couldn't have been that bad, or, you know what I mean, all these really ignorant remarks made out of complete ignorance, right? They don't realize what people go through, having been, brought up and born into families with a lot of domestic violence and a lot of abuse and child abuse and whatnot. They just don't realize the damage done. And even if they see movies on TV about it, these different movies that come out periodically about abused children, for instance, like Precious and different movies like that, they still don't get it because they've never experienced it. And so, for anybody who's ever experienced a lot of violence and a lot of psychological damage and a lot of abuse, then, we know what we're talking about. So that's why I just want to do this show, just to be one more voice for people who have survived child abuse, right, and who are still walking through their journey. Because I just wanted to be one more voice just to say, hey, we can do this. We have to do it. We owe it to ourselves to get help and to keep reaching out for that help wherever it is, whether it's a counselor, a therapist, group support, doesn't matter. Just as long as we keep reaching out and not suffer alone in silence, right? Because that is so sad. And it's just unfortunate, and so many people do it. And I know because I was one of them, right? So that's the thing. And also, if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, just so that they can help you, make the decision whether or not you should be listening. There's a lot of adult material, adult content on here, right? And it is mainly about stopping child abuse. But the whole issue is young people might not have heard a lot about this stuff, and it could be could be scary for young people, especially if they haven't heard about a lot about abuse and whatnot. And so and also for your own protection, because I fight to save children's lives. That's what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. And, there's so many sick and absolutely sick people out there trying to get a hold of children. So if you're a young person, under the age of 18, I ask that you would get someone to listen to this show with you. Make sure that it's okay for you to listen to it. And then let an adult know what you're doing online, you know what I mean? And don't just assume that you will not ever come in contact with a child sexual predator, because there's hundreds of thousands of them out there, and they are out there every day trying to get a hold of children, and they pose as other people, they pose as young people, they pose as your school age friends. They might pose as a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and they might say stuff like, "Oh, I have a skateboard and I love to go to the parks and ride my bike. I like to do this. I like to do that." And then they'll try to get you to meet them somewhere, right? And this has happened. And then these young people go meet these people who they think are their friends, and it turns out to be a child sexual predator. And they're either assaulted or killed. You don't want that to happen to you, but you don't want to live in fear. What you want to do is get the education and get the knowledge on how to keep yourself safe, how to keep your friends safe, your family safe, right? It's very important. Just type into your browser, internet safety for children, online safety for children, and it'll bring up all kinds of websites with great information, right? And the FBI has an awesome one, and I always talk about it because I really like it. It's a good website for parents as well as for young people, and on internet safety and how to stay safe online, right? So important. So that's why I say this on every show, because I do care. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing these shows, right? So that's the thing. We'll get right onto the article here. Codependency. This is from www.saahelp.com, and then /partners _SA/codependency.htm. And they were saying that, like Friday we were looking at this, it says codependent personality disorder is a dysfunctional relationship with the self characterized by living through or for another, attempts to control others, blaming others, or a sense of victimization, attempts to fix others, and intense anxiety around intimacy. It says it is very common in people raised in dysfunctional families and in the partners and children of alcoholics and addicts. And so, I was raised in a very dysfunctional family, so I can imagine there's some codependency going on there. But I don't know. That's why I don't want to self-diagnose, you know what I mean? But I do like to look at this stuff because I do relate to some of it. I don't relate to all of it, but I do relate to some of it. And that's why we're really supposed to get a professional diagnosis from a professional who's licensed. A licensed psychologist, a licensed therapist, a licensed doctor, we could diagnose ourselves into having just about anything if we wanted to. My dad does. He's just a prime example. That's why I use him for an example, because he's one of the people in my life that I've met who if he sees something, he must have it. If he sees something on TV about the colon disease, then he's got it immediately. Oh, I've got that. And he starts panicking and he gets himself all upset, right? And then if he sees something else about some heart thing, he's like, "Oh, that's what's going on with my heart. I got that." He just immediately self-diagnoses himself into having all of these different diseases and problems. And so he spends his life very paranoid because he thinks he's got all these diseases, and everything else. And then the doctors look at him and they're like, "You're one of the most healthy, nearly 90-year-old men we've ever seen in our lifetime." Like, he's almost 90 and he does quite well. But in his mind, he's got all these different diseases and all these problems. So we don't want to do that to ourselves. So when we're reading through this stuff, it's very important not to diagnose ourselves. If we might relate to most of it, we might relate to some of it or none of it, right? And they do say on all of this stuff that I read out, pretty much regarding any kind of behavior issue, emotional issues, different things like that, whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder or different things, that just because we experience some of the different symptoms that we might relate to it doesn't necessarily mean we have it. So it's just the, really we have to be we have to be serious about this. We cannot just diagnose ourselves. I don't. I've looked at the stuff surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder on many of my shows here before, like last winter and whatnot. And I relate to some of it, but I'm not going to self-diagnose myself and say, oh, I must have that. I do have that. I mean, I would rather have someone who is licensed, to make that sort of diagnosis, right? But it doesn't mean that I don't relate to some of it and can actually see how that could happen growing up in these types of environments or experiencing these types of things. It's really no wonder that we don't relate to most of it, right? But we might not be we might not be actually suffering from it. So that's the whole issue. It might be something else. So that's why I usually don't say, oh, well, I relate to that, so I must have it, right? It's just a good idea not to do that, because we'll just make ourselves that much more upset. I think it's better if you think you have this stuff, and I do, that we go get a professional diagnosis from a licensed, trained professional, right? That's what I think. Because a lot of people will try to tell us what we have and what we don't have that are not qualified to make that decision, right? Just like I'm not qualified to make this decision for myself, whether or not I'm codependent, right? But I like to read about it because growing up in this kind of situation, it does sort of show you what can happen to people when they are, and that's what we're talking about, adult survivor issues of child abuse, right, and how hard it is for people, and that's why it's so important that we get help, right? So they were talking here on this, we actually went through this portion of it, but they said codependency is a disorder that they said usually has its roots in deep feelings of shame that arise from child abuse. Shame is the feeling that you are not good enough, not deserving, inherently worthless than other people, bad, etc. Many people who were shamed in their history spend much of their lives feeling themselves in such a one-down position to others, like, just lesser than, lower than, right? So we went over that on Friday. And that's just horrible that we've been made to feel like that. And I know so many people have, so many people. Others, don't, the abuse just, it wasn't so straight, so they might have been told, but they don't believe it, they don't buy into it, and so they just walk past it. And then others, if you've just been so berated and so beaten down with that all your life, right, it's very hard to have a different picture of yourself on the inside without completely changing your mind about yourself, right? So that's the whole thing. Emotional abuse and psychological abuse is very damaging. It says, that a person can either go that way where they feel like they're lesser than, or they can go the other way and flip over into feeling arrogant, superior, being needless, not needing anyone or anything, denying that they have any emotional problems or emotions at all, and assuming a one-up position with others, which is, they're just a little bit better off than most people, or better than, right? And in either case, both adjustments in adult life reflect deep toxic shame and are the product of abuse. So it says both adjustments are dysfunctional. So either way, feeling one up or one down in this situation, not facing the facts and not facing what's actually happened and not facing the issues at hand, right? A person can just go on sort of feeling these things, and that's dysfunctional in itself. I guess that's what they're trying to say. It says here, the pain of this sort of loneliness combines with the deep wounds of the core of shame and often drives the codependent into maladaptive efforts to cope. And these efforts may include controlling other people, either ruthlessly or through excessive indulgence and kindness, right? Addictions, emotional deadening, living vicariously through others, and so forth. It's very interesting. It says, only when codependents come to accurately value themselves as people, meet their own needs and wants openly and appropriately, and repair the boundaries damaged in childhood and later, can they enter recovery from codependency. So that's only when a person who has who is codependent actually accurately learns how to value themselves as people, meets their own needs instead of everybody else's, right? And meets their own needs and wants, right? Appropriately, it says here, and repairs the boundary damage done in childhood. So this is very interesting. And for people who have survived child abuse, right? I mean, it's very hard for us to even consider meeting our own needs a lot of times, you know what I mean? Because when you're brought up in that type of situation, your own needs obviously didn't matter as abused children, right? And obviously, right, the abused children's needs just don't count. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I need love, I need help, I need care, I need concern, I need for my parents to stop abusing me or my siblings or whoever's doing that. And obviously that doesn't happen, and so they're our needs were not met. So it's hard for us to learn how to meet our own needs and how to value ourselves as people that should be meeting our own needs, right? We do have to take a look at that. I mean, I think it's a good idea to keep in mind that we should be helping other people too instead of just only ourselves. But I shouldn't be about other people first and never about ourselves. And I've met people like that. I have. I'm not like that. But I know I've met people like that who cannot seem to think that they are worth enough that they should try to go after and seek out their own what's gonna help them in their own lives. They're only ever concerned with what's going on in somebody else's life, and don't want to meet their own needs. And I've met people like that. I didn't recognize it as being codependent, right? But I felt bad for them because I thought, man, that's really sad. Because this person doesn't even believe that they're worth it enough to even consider trying to meet their own needs, and they're just only concerned with everybody else. And I thought, as much as they look like they're nice people and everything like that, they're really just hurting themselves by doing that. And the other people might not even care or benefit. Like, really, they wouldn't. Maybe they'll benefit from it, but they don't care that this other person is putting all this time and effort into that. And that's just sad, right? No, we have to be responsible and learn to love ourselves, right? I mean, and that's hard, and I know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that's easy. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it can happen just like you snap your fingers and it's done, All right, I'm healed from child abuse. Yay! That's just not reality. That is not going to, I mean, I wish it could happen. And maybe there's been somebody in history who's actually done that. Snapped their fingers and said, hey, I'm done, I'm healed, hallelujah. I would wish that for anybody. I really would, because wouldn't that be great? I know myself it's just not like that, and I know for a lot of people it's not like that. I'm talking to a lot of my friends and survivors. It's not like that. You know what I mean? It takes time, but we have to do it. We're ultimately responsible for making this happen. I can't ask the guy down the street to make this happen for me. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, hey, buddy, I don't know you, but can you make all these horrible feelings go away and cause me to heal from my child? No, it's just not going to happen. I'm responsible for making this happen. And that's what I realized, like I keep saying 3 years ago, but it is so important for people to know. I've been on a 3-year journey, and some people need longer than that, and some people need serious therapy, and some people need, you know what I mean, because we're all different, so there's no shame in it. There's no shame in this whole situation. The shame does not belong to us. The shame belongs to the abusers, right? I think we all got to get a real good, clear grip on that and realize that the shame does not belong to us. The shame and the shameful acts belong to the abuser. And really what we have to do is learn how to love ourselves, how to care about ourselves, how to nurture ourselves, and take care of ourselves. It is so important because, we did not deserve that. No one does. I don't care who you are. And people that walk around thinking that it's okay to abuse children, I mean, they're sick. You know what I mean? Absolutely sick. And I've met people like that. Believe it or not, people would freak out. I mean, if you know what I mean? If I could pinpoint who these people were that actually said, I think it's perfectly okay to abuse a child. I mean, what's going on in somebody's head that thinks like that, right? They're obviously extremely sick people. And I think people that make statements like that should be held accountable and have to see a psychiatrist. I really do. And it's like, okay, well, there's freedom of speech, right? So we should be allowed to say what we want. But you know what? Anybody going around saying something like that, you just wonder if they have kids or if they've ever had children and that they abuse them. It just makes you just wonder. And then you think, are they going to have children in the future and abuse them? Is this a future abuser? You know what I mean? I've met people that say stupid things like that and they weren't joking. And so that's the whole issue, and you just feel bad for them because it's like, you know what, hope you did not experience, what we've experienced. I really do, for your own sake, you know what I mean? Because if you haven't, then you don't want to know, you know what I mean, the horrors that are involved within the realm of child abuse, right? So it just makes me sick, these people that walk around saying things like that. And back to the subject of what we're talking about. We have to learn to self-nurture. We have to learn how to get help, right? Whether it's seeking out a therapist, a counselor, If you can't afford that, quite often there's these online groups that you can join, which I actually like a lot. And you can join anonymously. You don't even have to give your real name. If you're concerned about, certain people finding out about you, you don't want anybody to find out who you are, you can just join anonymously. You do have to. Okay, I did get dropped from my show. Missed a couple of minutes there. Yeah, I'm having problems with my Skype today. The actual program that actually brings me into the switchboard and all that. And I was having problems getting in, and now it's dropping me from my show. But that's okay. Hopefully I'm still streaming, and hopefully you can hear me. But anyway, yeah, I was just talking about, you can join these groups anonymously if you want to, and just, get some help, right? There's lots of people out there who are going through sort of the same similar things that we are, same type of issues. They understand how hard it is. They know what a journey it is, right? And so they're quite often very much help to pull people along. They're like very encouraging, and I know firsthand because I joined a few of those groups, and they were so helpful. And the people that I met in those groups were just awesome, and I wish them the best of everything, you know what I mean? I did meet some people that I thought were just extremely nice people, and they were suffering along just like me and a whole bunch of other people. And it just makes you realize just how many people out there actually have been abused, right? It's just absolutely horrible. And the situations that they've gone through, but we can do it, and I got all these people in front of me, for instance, I'm not going to name names, but the thing is there's all these survivors who are out there who have been on the journey a lot longer than I have, and they've come through it, and even though they say they still have days, they still have moments where, they still have times where they're just not feeling all that strong, and they do need a hand, and they do need some help. For the most part, they're like, you can do it. They're helping to pull me along. So this is the whole thing. I believe that we can do it, and I believe that we just need to keep reaching out for that help wherever we can find it and whatever works for us, right? So they said here, we went over last Friday also symptoms of codependency, and we went over quite all those, and there's just a lot of them, and there was some very, very interesting stuff here. This website's awesome. It's www.saahelp.com, and that's /partners_of_SA, the letters SA, and then /codependency.htm. And they have key identifying behaviors. This is where we left off. The following questions can be used to help you identify unmanageable areas of your life and bottom line behaviors. So it says, do you, and these are the questions that we can ask ourselves, right? Do you find yourself trying to control a partner, relative, friend, employer, or colleague's sexual actions or thoughts? This is to do with addictions, like sexual addictions and whatnot. It says, do you allow sex to play a dominant or all-consuming role in your relationships? It says, do you think things would be better if only you performed better sexually? It says, do you find sex more uncomfortable than pleasurable? And do you withdraw emotionally, have your mind on other things during sex, or feel empty afterwards? Do you focus more on other person's sexual attitudes, beliefs, or needs than your own? And do you use sex to try to repair relationships when they are strained? And do you find yourself engaging in compulsive or depressive behaviors to avoid your feelings, like, for instance, sleeping too much, losing sleep, eating poorly, overeating, overspending, or abusing chemicals? And I did all of that. You know what I mean? Sleep too much. A long time ago, I used to sleep too much. Losing sleep, I've done that forever. But I had periods of time where I would just go to bed, and I'd just be like, okay, I'm going to bed, and I'd stay there for a lot, weeks. I'd get up, but the thing is, it would always be on my mind. I just want to go to bed. I just want to go to sleep. My mom did that too. Losing sleep, I've always been doing that since I was a kid. You know what I mean? I just always exist on minimal sleep, right? Eating poorly, that's definitely something I've done over the last few years just because I cannot afford to eat properly, but food up here is very expensive. But, I've always kind of not looked after myself that well as far as eating. Well, I did for a few years when Cecil and I were together. We were cooking healthy meals because I know both of us are cooks, right? So I do know how to cook properly and cook good meals. It's just a matter of whether you can afford them and whether you care enough for your body to actually do that. And overeating is a problem with me. Overspending is a problem. I've got huge problems in both of those areas. Abusing chemicals, that's not a problem for me anymore, but it was. And so, smoking is my thing right now that I'm actually trying to get rid of. And that, that'd be it for me, thank God. But, I mean, I used to be a huge drug user when I was young and quit when I was 21. When most people would actually consider start doing drugs, that's when I quit. So I had already been doing drugs for many, many years before that. And I'm glad to be off of that stuff. But the cigarettes, I still have a problem with those, right? Overeating, I have to be really careful. Overspending, that's an issue just because, I'm like, well, got to live, you know what I mean? So I do tend to overspend as well. And, some of these things I'm sure are just because it's a compulsive behavior or depressive behavior, right? Here's another question for us. Participate in unhealthy or degrading relationships for fear of being. So they don't say anything else about that. Participate in unhealthy or degrading relationships for fear of being. I think they left off part of the question. But anyway, that can happen to people. Do we compare our appearance with others, like for instance coworkers, friends, celebrities? And do we avoid speaking with others, friends, or a professional counselor about our sexual behaviors or feelings? So we have about a minute left. There's more questions here, and there's lots more on this website, so I hope everybody will go and take a look. There's tests we can do. There's about codependency recovery from addicts and whatnot. So we'll continue that on tomorrow. And I'd like to take another look at the rest of this website. It's actually quite good. And be sure to get a hold of me if you need anything. Blog Talk Radio here, or Facebook, or if you need just a shoulder or just a friend. I'm available if you need resources or information that I might have. Get a hold of me. Tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. Lynn C. Tolson, author, survivor. She's written a book called Beyond the Tears. She'll be on with us at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Lynn C. Tolson. This is just going to be an amazing show, and I hope you will tune into that. Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And then tomorrow night, same time, same place. It'll be Donna Shear and myself. And tomorrow morning, One Child to Be Survivor to Another. So we'll see you guys around. Have a great day, everybody, and take care of yourselves. Make sure you do keep reaching out. Don't suffer in silence. And we do count. We do matter. I don't care how stupid that sounds. That is the truth right there. We do count. We do matter. Make sure you do get some help. You do deserve to have a good life. And it's very important that you know that, right? And really begin to work on that. And if no one's told you that, then, I'm telling you right now, you do count, you do matter, and you do deserve to have a good life. I know lots of people that don't believe that, but it's very true. So have a great day, everybody, and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.